of the officials who are here. Minister, 3 weeks ago when you appeared before the Health Committee and were asked about the massive national security breach at the Winnipeg lab, you stated that PHAC at all material times acted in quote-unquote the highest order, and that with respect to accountability, no one at PHAC will be fired. Do you stand by that?
Well, in the first order, these two employees were fired. They were held to account for their actions and for the lies that they told. But I believe, as I stated then, I will state now, that the Public Health Agency acted appropriately throughout that process in responding to those lies and that misinformation.
Thank you, and no one else will be fired, correct?
I am not aware of anybody else being fired. The people who are responsible for engaging in that activity have been
So I want to ask you some questions about decisions that PHAC made surrounding this massive national security failure, and Canadians can judge themselves whether PHAC acted in the highest order, as you stated 3 weeks ago before the Health Committee. First, why in October 2018 did PHAC enter into a material transfer agreement with the Wuhan Institute of Virology to transfer from the Winnipeg lab Ebola and Hepatitis, two of the most deadly pathogens? Why did that happen?
Well, in 2018, we were working collaboratively with China on developing therapies and interventions with respect to Ebola. It is a serious global pathogen, and that the efforts at that point in time were to collaborate with China in a partnership to take action with respect to Ebola.
Minister, I asked you a question. I'm going to build on it. October 2018 is significant. This material transfer agreement was initiated by none other than Dr. Chu, one of the two scientists. In October 2018, at the time that that material transfer agreement was entered into, PHAC was already aware that Dr. Chu was named on a Chinese patent, which was highly suspicious and had been flagged to CSIS by the head of the Winnipeg lab as a potential national security threat. And so why in the world, with that knowledge, would PHAC transfer deadly, dangerous pathogens to Wuhan at the request of a scientist that PHAC knew at that time was a potential national security risk?
Well, in the fall, as you know, in the fall of 2018 is when this matter was first flagged as concern, and we have due process. The transfer that you're talking about was done in the full knowledge and with the full cooperation of the Public Health Agency in the interest of advancing the protection of our species against the infectious disease of Ebola. And at that point in time, the effort, because Ebola doesn't know boundaries, the effort was to work collaboratively with China and other countries. It is deeply disturbing, obviously.
Chair, point of order. This is the third time now that Mr. Cooper has interrupted the minister who's here as a witness. I think he's answering in good faith. I think that Mr. Cooper is asking questions, which he's perfectly entitled to. I would just ask, Mr. Chair, that the usual, the typical, the collegial back and forth that we would expect here at committee be allowed to take place rather than interruptions, because I'm trying to get a sense of the answers as well, and interruptions get in the way of that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Fragasatos. I think that Minister Holland, you should do your best to keep your answers concise, given that there is limited time for questions. Mr. Cooper, allow the minister to complete his answers. Go ahead, and we've stopped the clock, so okay. You're good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, you are right that it was in the fall of 2018 that red flags were first raised about these two scientists. And a preliminary investigation wasn't undertaken until December of 2018. That's months after the first red flags were raised, and in the interim, a material transfer agreement was signed with Wuhan at the request of one of those scientists who was deemed to be a potential national security threat. Why did it take so long to launch a preliminary investigation? 4 months? That's a long time.
Yeah, so in this instance, the nature of that patent and the reason why that patent hadn't been disclosed was being investigated, and there is due process. I would say that it is indeed sad for the world that we are no longer able to cooperate closely with countries with respect to deadly pathogens that represent a clear and present threat to the human race. The fact that there are countries that are engaging in activities that would endanger not only our country but all human beings is profoundly disturbing.
Minister, and then the report, a preliminary fact-finding report, is issued on March 23rd, 2019, that identified that the two scientists had engaged in multiple security and intellectual property breaches, and that they had engaged in unauthorized transfers, including to Wuhan, and had engaged in unauthorized research collaboration with the Beijing regime, including the People's Liberation Army. And what did PHAC do next? PHAC actually then transferred Ebola and Hennepin to Wuhan.
Well, you're making a connection between two completely separate things. In the first order, the transferring and working with China at that point in time to try to protect our species from Ebola was something that we were doing earnestly with the belief that China shared our desire to protect human beings from a deadly pathogen. In the second order, when you're talking about the individuals, the scientists who were fired, remember, these were individuals who were hired in 2003 and 2006. They are published throughout North America. They are eminent scientists. They are Canadians. They are Canadian citizens.
And not only that,
Sir, if I could finish, Mr. Chair, if I could be given a floor to do, I think it's a key point.
But it took another 3.5 months until July 5th, 2019, before the two scientists were finally marched out of the Winnipeg lab. Scientists that by March had been identified as working with the People's Liberation Army. This is Canada's highest security lab. Is that really an instance of PHAC acting on the highest order, as you said? Is that Mark Holland's definition of PHAC acting on the highest order?
Mr. Cooper, you are over time, but I will give the minister an opportunity to respond.
Due process is incredibly important, Mr. Chairman. These individuals had worked with the Public Health Agency. One was hired in 2003, one was hired in 2006. They were published and renowned across North America for their work in vaccines, virology, and in therapy. They were seen as being leaders in helping to save lives. If you are making an accusation against somebody and these people's careers rightfully are destroyed, before you destroy somebody's career, they are entitled to due process.
Minister,
due process is important in this country.
Or eminent
Mr.
spies.
Cooper, I'm sorry, your time has expired. Again, when we speak over each other, it makes it very difficult for our interpreters to do their job.